Well, I'd like to thank Faith, especially for contacting me about this night, and the Arden family, and of course Emma and the museum, which is a spectacular space for this place, for this event, I think, right? I have to say before I start that Faith, I don't know how many years ago it was Faith, but I recall how good your work was, right? And Faith, like Tenny, was a terrific poet when she was in my class. And I want to thank her not only for inviting me to be here tonight, but to say a few words and to introduce me to what I'll call the complex, mytho-Christian, slightly tinged, elegiac poems of Tenny Arlen. So I'm going to speak of themes tonight, but I'm not unaware of Tenny's clear talent for technique and structure. I'm not going to be talking about them. I'll mention it maybe here and there. And I'm going to be quoting now and then, and I'll try to indicate when I'm quoting. And you've heard a lot already about what I'm going to quote. So, I've been reading To Say with Passion, Why Am I Here? For a few weeks. And from the first, I was struck by Tenny Arlen's reaching after the ineffable. That is, her desire for a realm that cannot quite be described in words. The irony is that while she realizes this realm is virtually beyond reach of the living, she can describe not only the literary and psychic operations of her own search for it, but also its imagined tenor. I confess I know nothing of the Armenian language or Ukrainian verse. I can tell you that my own grandfather came over from Sicily, and there were times, I think, where my mother was caught between two worlds. I am, however, intimately familiar with the great English poets of the last 150 years. Tenny's poems recall not only William Butler Yeats, but also T.S. Eliot and Rainier Rilke, both of whom she mentions in her work. Like Tenny, all three sought something akin to the divine. Just as Yeats conceived of a mystic vision in much of his work, and Eliot strove to depict the domain of spirit in the four quartets, and Rilke rendered the vast, uncharted world of inner space in the Duino elegies, Tenny sojourns after a region that may be outside of time and the mechanisms of human thought. In fact, her poetics is laid out in her prose poem, which we've heard, Poet. God did not create for a rational reason, and similarly, the poet wants to escape life's rational, constructed perceptions that the world gives to her. God did not create for a rational reason, and similarly, the poet wants to escape life's rational, constructed perceptions that the world gives to her. That's a pretty good poetics if I've ever heard one, right? It's clear throughout this book that Tenny wishes to live via acts of creation a life made more divine by untethering herself from the constraints of rationality. That's why Tenny's poems can seem at times so dreamlike, so removed from the tactile things of this world, In her poem that's column-shaped, You Were, she searches for a being, or perhaps more accurately, a beingness, and finds a personified version of this potential. Though the second person you never appears in flesh or voice, it watches her amidst the beauty. That is to say, this other dimension exists. And in her enumerated sequential poem, Swans, she declares, I will write poetry to forget the time. In Tenny's polemic, time itself is cast along with the rational into the category of the useless and unhelpful. She always seeks to be without being burdened by the quotidian qualities of the physical life. And so, in perhaps the most remarkable poem of this volume, the enumerated sequence Stillborn, Tenny sees herself as pregnant with possibility. She is a vessel capable of reaching out of her present consciousness for something other. In a dramatically successful poetic gambit, she sees herself embedded in a kind of infinite present, describing herself in both the first and second person pronouns, dancing trance-like to the now. She longs for the moment when the I can be birthed into what I will call a more divinated you. But because the other near realm is nonetheless unreachable in our present state, she sees herself finally as stillborn, as we all must be. Let me turn to a kind of paradox, as perhaps the poet herself would. Tenny Arlen has given us a courageous poetry of spiritual realism. Like other poets who have died far too young, Sylvia Plath comes to mind quickly, we are deprived of the kind of yet more mature visionary work. It is, though, our privilege to have so much belletristic and metaphysical excellence in the form of this remarkable volume. To answer the book's title, we can say that Tenny was here, among many reasons, to give us the deep pleasure of transformative reading.